series that's going to walk through from concept to completion. How did I create the perfect vest to add to my travel wardrobe?
So, if you've ever wondered how a pattern actually starts before the finished design, which everyone's excited to see, the majority of the work is a lot of experimenting, swatching, and note taking that happens behind the scenes. And so I thought I'd kick off this new series of videos with my process for even conceptualizing a new crochet pattern and creating the very first prototype. And for me, it always starts with an idea. So I have inspiration boards and sketches and Pinterest ideas and yarn colors. Because sometimes an idea is inspired by a garment I've seen, or it could be a texture I want to try, or a specific yarn I have in my stash. So I'm not thinking about the pattern details. At this point, I'm thinking about the type of project, the shape or the proportions, who I'm designing it for. And this one, I was selfishly designing it for me. And so my tip is to just jot ideas down or sketch them out or pin them, because when I stand back and look at all of the ideas that were saved over the last couple of years, I could group my vest boards into a couple of very distinct projects. And I thought I was just kind of, elaborately kind of looking at everything and pinning ideas. And I had single breasted, I had double breasted. I had a really diverse set of collar types and shapes. And I could easily see the variety when I stood back was definitely into two groupings. This grouping I'm going to call more the versatile vest, because I was pinning ideas that would go from sporty and flip-flops to elegant dinners out. So it was clear that there was color themes going through it. I liked maybe thinking about different necklines and different options, but I clearly had a group that was, can I wear this and layer it, and can I wear it by itself? So that's what I started off with as the idea.
So why did my inspiration board go more menswear inspired? Well, I think it's because over the years I've tried a lot of crochet vests, and even I find this with sweaters as well. They're a bit boxy and not very flattering, if I'm honest. So this is a menswear vest that I have worn for decades. So it's been kind of a staple piece in my wardrobe. And it's inspired by sort of more of a menswear vest. It was part of a suit. And what I don't like about the vest, even though I have worn it a lot, is the silk back.
Now, I was lucky to have this vest to kick off the sort of planning the design more detailed next step for the project. And as we start planning about how the piece will actually be constructed, we think about different construction methods, the sizing or the fit, and can I keep the sizing consistent and scalable across different, versions of the vest and the pattern moving forward. So you're thinking about things like stitch counts. And most people probably have a vest like this in their projects, from the past. And this is the very first crochet vest that I ever made. So very beginner friendly. And I like that I could use cotton and make something very basic. It was also the first, construction I had tried for a piece of clothing. I like that you could change up the different trim elements of it. But like most beginner crochet vests, the body was a very simple front and back piece and a little bit boxy, even though I did make overlapping open sides that was, a little bit more flattering on this one. So with the design ideas that inspired the new piece, I'm looking to create something that's a bit more difficult as far as crocheting, lots of increases and decreases. So I used the vest that I had that was, again, not going to translate perfectly onto a piece of paper or a pattern because it has darts and different elements. But thinking, how crochets get kind of constructed, how I would have to do increases and decreases to make the peaks, I kind of roughly mapped out on a scrap piece of fabric the shape of the project that I wanted. And I do have a picture, which is also my inspiration board that I'm going to make lots of notes on as I go. but this gave me something easy I could wrap up and throw in my backpack as I traveled to work on the prototype.
Now I also know if I love the pattern, I'm going to have a lot of people ask me for it. And I want to be able to make something that I know is going to work for lots of different body shapes. So the people that I'm crocheting or knitting for are all very different body types.
So as I work on step 2 and really fleshing out the design, I often go back and revisit the inspiration board ideas as I think about construction and as I plan how the piece will actually work. So we're thinking now construction methods, the sizing and the fit. If I'm making this into a pattern, can I keep the sizing consistent and will it scale across different sizes for different people? And what about stitch patterns or textures or, next we're going to get into yarns. So I decided to keep the first prototype very simple. I'm not going to add a collar. I'm going to just focus on getting the right shape and the right fit. Now, step 3 is one of the most important steps, and that's as we swatch out what yarn we're going to shortlist for the project and the prototype. And I had some lovely bamboo yarn that's left over from a number of shirts that I have made, but I didn't have enough in my stash or the right sort of fabric that I think lent to the idea to really create the piece. So as the winter sales are on, I am watching for, again, a sort of very soft, drapey silver yarn that I think might work as I try out the prototype. And I'm also thinking about the stitch count and the type of stitches. I kind of wanted, again, to do something very simple, but I didn't want it to be very plain. So I'm not wanting to use a same stitch across the entire piece. And again, having a little bit of this blue is going to let me do some color placement. So I'm experimenting as I swatch out with different yarns. Will this work? This yarn actually is lovely. It's drapey and it's soft, but I will flag it didn't frog extremely well, but I think is the right idea for what I was looking for a color and a texture that would go from sporty to elegant. So now that I've managed to pick up some yarn, I'm experimenting with the stitches and shortlisting exactly how I want to flesh out the prototype, which is the next step as we kind of experiment with the ideas and turn them into a practical prototype piece that we can test. So I will play around with color placement. Again, I decided in the swatching to use for the majority a slip stitch back loop only. Again, very elegant, very plain. I think it goes from sporty and I can dress it up or dress it down. But because I do want some visual interest, I'm going to add in some rows of half double crochet slip stitch. And as I prototype out, I'll be experimenting to see if those give me issues in increasing and decreasing, if they create, too big of a jog, or exactly where the placement is ideal. So every 5 rows, every 7 rows, we'll experiment and make lots of notes. The next step is to really make a lot of adjustments on the go.
So over the next couple of months, I'll intersperse videos as I have worked on the vest to let you know how it's going. Is it meeting the design criteria? Is it actually easy to crochet? What mistakes have I made, because I will make many, and how have I frogged them out?
This is a lot of experimenting, a lot of undoing sections, a lot of redefining things as I go, so it's very messy and that is normal. And then once the prototype is done, I will be checking fit and proportions, whether my stitch pattern is consistent, how easy are the instructions, are there areas that are really confusing if someone's going to try and follow the pattern, and what kind of design tweaks are possible? Can you change proportions? Can you change stitch patterns or colors? Things that you could do to completely transform the project. So after the prototype works or doesn't work, I will start turning all of these notes into a clear pattern, writing down some step-by-step instructions, organizing better my stitch counts, and preparing for testing. And testing means that we're going to make more designs in different sizes and match the intended measurements to make sure everything flows well. So that is kind of the first steps of when I'm designing a new pattern, from the first idea and starting the prototype. And if you've ever wanted to design your own crochet patterns, start small, experiment, and don't be afraid if you're undoing and redoing sections, because that's how your ideas will evolve. So let me know if you are turning prototypes into published patterns, and I look forward to keeping you up to date to how this project works out. Thanks as always for your subscriptions, your likes, and we look forward to the comments below.